worth it?
Good morning.
Good evening.
Welcome to Gab Street.
It is Gab Street, episode...
4.
What, 4? Fuck.
We're on
We've
4
been doing-
now. That means it's been like a month and a half.
Yeah, something like that. Well, we were trying to go every other week, but now I guess we're doing every week now.
Yeah.
So every Wednesday at 6 a.m. these things go live.
We're doing every week now because we have decided...
Because we can.
Because we can. We've decided
Yeah.
we can do 1 week where it's just us two, which is this week, and 1 week where we have a guest.
Yes.
We'll do that alternatingly.
Yes, even though first episode it was just us, just kind of experimenting. We were like, I guess that's good enough to put up for the people to hear, and people liked it.
Yeah.
Then we had the second episode where we got really emotional, but for a good reason.
It is good.
Second time we got a little less emotional, but we got a little more educational.
Yes, we did.
But we were having it was like a single then 2 guests, and now we're back to just Corey and I, but we want to go to a format where it's Corey and I, then a guest, and then back to Corey and I, and you get the gist.
So there is more than the podcast, though. Why don't you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so we want to talk about, if you follow us on social media and listen to us, you've probably noticed that the Gab Street podcast is published under Outage Couch Media. Corey, I think you should start off by talking about exactly what Outage Couch was, considering you pretty much started it.
Yeah, so I pretentiously named myself manager when we started this whole franchise. Outage Couch Media began as just a YouTube channel, and it was... I came up with the name. I will
Well, you didn't
attest to that.
You didn't come up with the name.
I came up with the name. And
You took the name. You stole the name.
where from?
Didn't our good boy Miles Davis, a.k.a. Dylan Davis, a.k.a. Didn't he, like, come up with the name, and you were like, that's genius, and Dylan was like, alright, just take it.
I don't remember
More or
that.
less.
I honestly don't remember that at all.
No?
Yeah. Anyway,
Okay.
it was a YouTube channel with me, Gage, a guy named Sam, a guy named Jake.
Well, I didn't come in until later. It was
At the end of it, it was
Yeah.
all of us, and then a guy named Linus we mentioned in first episode, and then Joe Masucci was also a part of it for a little bit. But that went for surprisingly like a year.
Was it that long?
Yeah, it ended up lasting a little over a year. And we made a bunch of sketches, we made a bunch of videos about video games, and it was just kind of cookie cutter a little bit. I think it ended up dying because we were trying to follow the model of the typical YouTube channel where it's high content output and you're talking about everything that everyone else is talking about. Although we did talk about some obscure stuff, but just like gameplay videos and the sketches were good. The sketches that were directed by Sam and Gage were top quality, I think, and they were our signature thing. We didn't have time to do very much of that, though. But we do want to do more of that eventually. And we will have more of that happen. But for now, we're just going to stick with the podcast format. That is the easiest mode of content release we have right now. And Outage Couch Media will encompass, hopefully, a podcast, eventually YouTube channel, and what else?
I think it's... Well, you have tampered a lot with music. You yourself are a musician,
Yeah.
and we know a lot of people
yes.
in the business, so we do kind of want to involve more, bring that in to like be like another subsection so that we kind of branch out and do all forms of media, so that way we have video and audio, all forms of video and all forms of audio, just kind of like do what we can, bring a lot of creative people in and just see where we can go. But it's important that I think right now we take it slow, think big picture, but move slowly, because we don't have a lot of resources right now. So I think it's important to work with what we have and not take ourselves too seriously, but also it's important to take yourself seriously a little bit, because you want to make sure that you're putting out good content so that you can grow as a creator.
Agreed.
But because I think that's why Outage Couch kind of started to fail in the beginning, is because we took ourselves way too seriously, way too fast.
And everyone was confused on how seriously we should be taking ourselves,
Yeah.
and everyone had a different idea of
Right.
it. But what you mentioned was involving music as well. My music as Cordonic, which is my handle on SoundCloud and Instagram and Twitter, think of it as a pseudo record label, but we aren't gonna it's not a record label, but it's the name under which administratively my music will be released.
Mm-hmm. So eventually we just kind of we want to just kind of bring all of these together so that, you know, Gab Street is just a section of Outage Couch Media, where Outage Couch can still be like originally kind of what it was, but a little better and more kind of just together instead of kind of all over the place trying to pump out a bunch of content. I'm getting friend requests on Facebook from people I don't know.
That's great. See, that Gab Street's doing its job, clearly. You're already getting popular. One other aspect of what we've done in the past, we have a Steam group page that I set up in the beginning era of Outage Couch. It is called the Outage Couch. It is a public group, so you are allowed to join it if you would like. But on that, I set it up as a Steam curator. And for those of you who do not know what a Steam curator is, Sturmkircher. First of all, Steam is the game platform created by Valve to work on PCs. A lot of games are bought on the Steam store and launched through the Steam client.
You mean I don't have to go to a game store and buy a physical copy of a computer game anymore?
Exactly, that is true. And there are hella sales. Everything costs like $15 now. It's amazing.
This podcast is sponsored by Valve.
Ew.
It's not.
Ew. No. They can't count to 3, and this is the 4th episode. That doesn't make any sense. They don't even know this exists. They can't, because it's too many episodes.
That's true.
Yeah. We'd have to do an episode 2, like part 1.
It's true.
That's what this is.
This is episode 1, part 2 of 2.
Yes.
Yeah.
But on our Steam Curator page, through the administrative portion, every once in a while, we will have these small game developers that are very independent come to us and send us messages and send us copies of games to... it's mostly couch co-op games because that's what we advertise our group as talking about the most. So they'll send us these couch co-op games and I'll play them on my TV. I'll have some of the boys over. And we've received 8 games so far. All of them are couch co-op. And we've done a few curator reviews on those, pretty short. But we might expand into actually going in depth on reviews of those things.
Yeah.
That might be cool.
Well, as I'm currently working on a project, like a research project, if you will, for a school project, where I'm trying to... The research question that I'm looking for is, like, what is the most effective way to monetize internet media? And I was looking a little bit into sponsorship, so I had Corey kind of give me the developers and the names of the games of the people that we got these games through. And I started to contact some of them, and I've had quite an interesting experience, I guess. I emailed, or tried to email just about all of them, or message them through some form of social media. And a couple of them got back to me. Unfortunately, they just didn't quite work out in what we were looking for. So there was one company that I got a hold of via Facebook, and I told him what we were looking for, saying, hey, we're starting a podcast, we have a YouTube channel, in exchange for a little bit of money our way, just so I can, prove that it is possible to make a little bit of money through like sponsorships. Is just as an example. Just you float a little bit of cash our way, and we will either take the game or your games or promote your company through our podcast, or we'll make gameplay videos. We'll do our best to promote it because we do have a little bit of an audience through the podcast and through the Outage Couch still. So I think, but eventually they seemed interested at first. And it was like, yeah, we'd be willing to work out a deal, and I explained what we were looking for, and they said, well, we were thinking more along the lines of just both of us advertising each other, which in theory I think would have been good, except this company, we talked about how they were independent. They were independent to the point where they're...
Independent of followers.
Yeah, they were saying that they would promote us through their Facebook page, which has less than half of what the Outage Couch YouTube channel alone has, in terms of followers and subscribers. So I really didn't see it really
coming to fruition.
Yeah, I didn't really see that it was worth it. I think we would just be kind of, and like I think like we reached out to them because we actually did play these games. We did have fun with them, and we think that it would be like we wouldn't just take in random sponsors if we didn't see some kind of way that we can connect to them either on a personal or professional level. But eventually, just hasn't worked out yet. We still want to try a little bit because just for the sake of. Plus, I feel that besides the fact of making money, because that's not what's important here. We're just two guys who are very creative and want to do a bunch of different projects.
But if it's a possibility,
right,
and someone is willing,
absolutely,
we are for sure wanting to do that.
Plus, I feel like it makes your podcast sound a little more professional if you say this episode is sponsored by whatever.
Yeah. And if anyone listening now has some sort of business venture and would like to work with us sponsorship-wise, our email for those kind of inquiries is theoutagecouch@gmail.com. That's theoutagecouch@gmail.com.
So we are just kind of looking to grow a little bit on the professional side, I guess. So if you guys are interested, we do have a couple other companies that we plan to get in touch with. But if you are looking to get some advertising out there, then you can definitely contact us. But yeah, we talked about how these are mainly independent, and I think you and I are a big fan of indie games. I myself worked a little bit on games back in the day, kind of what my short film Game Makers is based on, because for the Google Science Fair that we were required to do in 8th grade, I made a video game for blind people, which sounds cool, but if you actually look at what it was the most simplistic shit that I basically just copied a tutorial off YouTube and learned how to add sound effects.
So you're expecting them to look at the game? You're expecting blind people to look at
Well, no, I would assume somebody can at least...
If I looked at the game, Gage.
Well, I didn't think... I was in 8th grade, okay, when I made this piece of shit. And, like, it has visuals to it, but there's a joke if you go back and watch the old Game Makers video, you see me wearing a blindfold playing the game and being like, this is great. And it actually was pretty interesting, except that it was just kind of... just generally flawed, clearly. I unfortunately lost the project file for that game when my computer kind of caked its pants, to say the least. So unfortunately I don't have it anymore, which kind of sucks because it was pretty neat. But anyway, back to just indie games in general. You and I, Corey, are pretty big fans of indie games.
And I have worked on one, believe it or not.
Yeah, when you were part of Brockrand.
Yes, so I, again, pretentiously assumed manager position, because that's what I do. And I kind of coordinated this group of teenagers. I was 13 at the time, I believe. No, 14 or 15, something like that. And we actually got a pretty decent skeleton of a game going. Like, it was a demo. It was a platformer. Mm-hmm. We had plenty of talented artists and animators, one of which we actually want to end up having as a guest. His name is Vazim. Also Zay. He is a very talented game developer and artist, pixel artist, if you will. He has a game that he's working on called Halt right now, so I would recommend checking that out. But he was one of the animators on there, and it was a game based off of a forum that I mentioned first episode, where I was part of the Blockland forums, and we tried to make a game based off of the communal happenings within that forum, like all the forum trolls, all the really good people. We tried to we wrote a story down. We actually had a story that involved the growth and death of this forum, because it's pretty much dead now. But
Brockrand, now part of Outage Couch Media. Outage Couch Media is...
We did a podcast too.
It
was a podcast.
We did do a podcast.
We did like 30 episodes, dude. It was awesome.
We were like 12.
Yeah, I was literally 3 years old, and we did a podcast for 30 episodes. I was like, oh, like it was
Your
really...
voice it sounds the same. I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure you kind of hit puberty at like when like in the womb, because as long as I've known you, your voice has pretty much sounded the same.
Nice. That's good to know. I still sound the same as when I was 13. So that's great. Glad to know that.
You used to be able to do like the best impressions. I remember because we rode the bus home together.
Yeah.
In like 8th grade, and I remember you, like just dying laughing because the impressions you could do.
I don't remember any of them now. They were probably too offensive to put on here. So we'll try to remember those later. But again, like I said earlier, the demo was playable, and the animations were rock solid, just like I was playing it, and it was just really fun. If we had actually, because the only reason I quit, this would be a real game that you could play with characters if I had the full version of Game Maker.
Mm-hmm.
It stopped me at 20 sprites, and I didn't know what to do because I didn't have money to buy it, and so I didn't have Game Maker Studio or anything like that. So it stopped production, and it's been dead ever since. And if I could have finished that game, that would have been...
Do you still have the old project file?
I do have the old project file, yes.
Well, at least you have the ability to go back to it. Unlike the stuff that I used to work on back in the day when my computer just kind of failed. I lost all the stuff that I was working on.
It sucks.
But, let's, I want to switch over. So we were talking to get a chunk about indie games. There's a lot of, like, AAA stuff that's been coming out recently.
Oh, boy.
And there's stuff that's just kind of...
Anthem.
Well, it seems like... I've taken a look at Anthem, and it seems pretty cool, but did you ever... You played Warframe?
I did, and it's actually fantastic.
Yeah.
Props to that dev team, because they fix problems like that.
Yeah.
They're actually so cool.
I was a big fan of Warframe, and that's what kind of Anthem seems like in a bit. A lot of people are comparing it to Destiny, like a Destiny Warframe combo kind of thing.
Yeah. Along with, Apex Legends is compared to Titanfall. I was about to say Titanfall.
Well, it's made by the same developer.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah, it's Respawn Entertainment.
Okay.
Which explains it, because... And Titanfall 2 kind of got... Like, Titanfall 2 is actually a really good game, but I think it kind of flopped because it came out at the same time as, I think...
Red Dead Redemption 2, I believe, is when it... No.
No,
I'm thinking of a different
Titanfall 2
game.
is a couple... No, yeah, Titanfall 2
No, that's
came
older.
out a couple years ago.
I need to read up on my lore, man.
2016, 2017.
My real life lore.
But yeah, it kind of flopped because it came out at the same time as like Battlefield 1, I think, and Battlefield and Call of Duty Infinite Warfare. Like there were a bunch of other shooters that came out at the time, so people were just kind of like, "Oh, Titanfall, yeah, I remember that when it came out. Are you gonna get it? Are you gonna get the second one? Yeah, probably not."
I had Titanfall 1. I got it for $10 from the Walmart website.
From the Walmart website?
Yeah, because I had a $10 Walmart gift card, and I could get a digital copy from there. So that's the way I got
Dark Souls
it.
2 from Walmart.
Really?
Yeah. I've never played that game.
You have Dark Souls 2?
I have Dark Souls 1 and Dark Souls 2.
Dude, we're making some videos where you fuck up.
But I've played like 5 minutes of Dark Souls.
Yeah.
That's about it. And
yeah, that's why it's going to be funny.
I have so many games sitting on my shelf that I just haven't played.
Let's play them, dude.
I bought...
Get a capture card.
Yeah, I know. Like, but I have Mortal Kombat X.
Yeah.
Tentacion. What's... Jesus Christ.
Mortal Kombat kick you, man.
So much.
It was a meme.
What was that? Middle Earth Shadow of Mordor.
Shadow of Mordor. That's a great game.
I have it, and it's one of those games that I just never got around to playing. My game library is ridiculously big because I'm a collector. Well, my PS2 library is probably my biggest. It's not like super big. Yeah. But it's like it takes up like a shelf and a half.
Okay.
In my collection.
How many games you got on Steam, Gage?
I'm not a big PC guy. I only have about like 70. What is that number?
I'm on 221.
221.
221 Steam games.
I think I have somewhere between 50 to 70, somewhere around there.
Rookie numbers.
And like a lot of them were also games that I just haven't got around to playing. There's just too many games out there.
Bruh. Yeah, it's true.
Because if I play a game that I'm most likely going to invest most of my time into that game for a while. Like last summer, I just got back into Borderlands 2. Yeah. I just kind of played that through the whole summer. And then I got back into Fallout 3, I think. Yeah, Fallout 3. And was playing that for a long time. So there's just so many games out there that it's like, especially because I'm kind of an old school collector.
Yeah.
And so it's just like
Fucking
I see a
hipster.
game, like I go to this place over in Hilliard called Play It,
Yeah.
Play It Games, Movies, and Music. Shout out to them. I've been going to that place since I was in middle school, and they have a huge collection of just new games, new and old movies, new and old and music. That's where a majority of my collection came from. And they have some games there for like super cheap. Like I think I got Grand Theft Auto 3 there for $2.
Nice.
And but yeah,
Why?
so
Was it
I
like
think 'cause-
spit on? Or
no,
what?
it's just because there's like so many copies of those games
Oh,
floating
yeah.
around. So there's like these guys actually know what this game is probably worth.
Actually market price. Yeah.
But I was actually there today because I was shooting a video over there for something that I'm working on, and I picked up a game called Oni that was $2, and this is a game that was developed by Bungie, the same guys who did Halo, but it was published by Rockstar. So it's like it's one of those really mixed bagged games, and like unless you're like a big Bungie fan, then not a lot of people have heard of it. The same way a lot of people probably haven't heard of like Marathon.
Yeah.
Like if you grew up in the '90s and kind of were a big Bungie fan, then you probably knew. But like outside of that, a lot of people don't know about Bungie games other than Halo and Destiny.
Gotcha.
But like anyway, these guys, they had some really cool games for super cheap, so that was a really quick and easy way to spend a lot of money growing a library that I have played maybe 10% of.
Anything by EA?
I do have some stuff by EA.
Yeah.
I
Let's
have-
talk about EA. Because
Uh,
fuck EA, and that's what everyone's saying. I understand, but fuck EA.
Well, here's
I'll give you my story real
Okay.
quick. My one EA fuckover story. I only have one because I never engaged with this company ever again. But I was a little shit, and I took all of our old our old Xbox 360 games that we weren't playing anymore, and I traded them in at GameStop, and it was like $50.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it came out to. Just like 200,000 games at GameStop, and we put that toward a pre-order of Battlefront, the first one that EA put out.
Yeah.
Because, like, oh, it looks so good. Like, that's all it had going for it. But I played it, and I realized that it was just whoever clicks first wins, and whoever clicks faster. And the single-player options, I think I played those longer than anyone else did ever, because I was just searching for some level of something, of substance in the single-player shit. And it was okay. Like, the combat's fun. But
there was,
there's no substance to it,
single player and like real single player in that game. Like there was no campaign
Yeah.
or anything because it was like so many and like the original. So many people were playing online. It's like yeah, but it also the originals had a really good story too.
Yeah.
Like if you played through those, like they were like
It's just like the simulations.
campaign, and the Galactic Conquest. I think is what they.
Battlefront 2 for PS2 though, that shit slaps.
It's backwards compatible on Xbox One,
Bruh.
so I want to get a copy because I don't know if like I doubt they brought the servers back up, but I think you can still play through the single player.
You mean you can put a PS2 disc in an
Well, not the
Xbox
no,
One?
there's no because it was on the original Xbox too.
Okay.
And so Xbox One is going.
There was
through
an
its phase.
Xbox 2?
God fucking damn it! I'm gonna strangle you. No, the original Xbox that came out in 2001
Okay.
had the original Battlefront games on it, and Xbox One is going through a phase where it's making a bunch of those backwards compatible, and so all the Star Wars games that were released on the original Xbox are now backwards compatible. And I actually got a copy of Star Wars, not Rogue Squadron, Commando, Star Wars. What was
Going Commando.
fuck, what was it?
That
Some
means
Commando
no
something.
underwear.
I don't know. It was like free for their games with gold thing, and I picked it up, and it's like a Star Wars first-person shooter.
Okay.
That looks really cool. That came out, so I picked that up.
I played Force Unleashed. That was pretty good.
That is one of my favorite games. That was like growing up. I had that on the Wii. Like the best way to play that game, I think, was on the Wii, because you can actually like fuck around with the Wii remote, and it's like I have a real lightsaber. Look at me, and then you chuck your remote into the TV, and then your mom yells at you.
Then
My-
you don't get to watch Hulu anymore.
Well, Hulu wasn't a thing yet. Netflix was. That was
Hulu still isn't a thing, Gage.
But my mom, I had a Wii. I was one of those kids that got the Wii as their primary gaming system because it was the cheapest out of the three
Yeah.
when it came out. So my mom was always like, because we paid a lot of money for a nice like 45-inch flat screen. And my mom was like, if you're going to play the Wii, you better wear the wrist strap, because I cannot afford for you to chuck this thing into the TV, because that was like a big concern that a lot of people were doing. We're just like, just whipping it so hard that it just throws the nunchuck and like sends it right through the screen. I still actually have that TV. It works really nice. I have it in my basement. It's because it's like that TV came out right at the time when HDMI was HD was becoming a big thing.
Yeah.
So like HDMI, it has like 3 HDMI ports, but it still has a component and 2 spots for composite for like AV. So that it's great for like hooking up my original Xbox, my PS4, my PS3, while hooking up like my Nintendo 64 and my PS2 to it. So I can hook up a bunch of stuff to it, compared to like most TVs that come out nowadays, they'll have like 4 HDMI ports, but AVs and standard definition is kind of just phased out by now, which is unfortunate, because I mean you can buy adapters and stuff, but there's a lot of people out there that, you know, can't really, that have old gaming consoles and have to like scrounge around to find a TV that can play them.
Gage, do you believe in HD DVDs?
HD DVD.
Do you? Do you believe in HD DVDs?
I mean, do you believe in Betamax?
I don't believe in Blu-ray, man.
You don't believe in Blu-ray?
Blu-ray's not real. I don't think it ever existed.
I feel like we're stealing this joke.
I feel like we're stealing this joke. We'll go back to this later in another episode. We'll finally understand.
Well, you can't just leave them on a cliffhanger like
but
that.
I will.
But, you fuck.
So we talked a lot about AAA game studios. I've heard some shit about 2K, and I've been watching Jim
Really?
Sterling lately, and no, Square Enix is what I'm thinking of.
Okay.
But I don't remember specifically what, so I was hoping you would know, but I guess you don't.
Nope. All
So,
right.
any other game studios that are just kind of like meh right now?
I think Bungie is now leaving Activision, so they're like, because I think the thing is like, if I'm
How much is the alimony?
I don't know.
$20.
But apparently they're saying, I think Activision was behind the whole reason why Destiny was having like microtransactions or like the expansion packs and everything, so that they can make more money. And now Bungie, I guess, is going to steer away from that. But I've also heard that it was originally Bungie's idea, and Activision was just kind of like pushing it. So I've heard mixed things about that whole situation. So I don't know. But when I was really hyped for Destiny 2 when it came out, because it came out on PC this time, and a buddy of mine was like, hey, we got to get this all on PC, and then we played it all together for like a month, and then we just stopped playing it, and I was like, wow, that was a waste of my money and my time, because like we played through the story and everything, and I was like, it was okay.
Yeah.
I was never even a really big fan of Destiny 1's story. I was just I just played it with friends. Like, it's one of those things where just playing with a group is what makes the experience in that game. But with I almost said Halo, but with Destiny 2, it was like, I don't know, it was just something about it where just, for some reason, I wasn't having as much fun as I remember playing with my friends on Destiny 1. So I just so now Destiny 2, it's still installed, but I'm probably not going to play it anytime soon.
Gotcha. So we talked about Bungie. We've talked about EA. Talked a little bit about Activision. Let's talk about the big stinking pile of concrete that is Bethesda, and how they
Bethesda, it's got some.
They kicked their pants, Gage.
Yes, but
you said that earlier.
I didn't.
You said kicked your pants.
I said the phrase "cake."
I'm just referring
right?
to the phrase. Go
Yes.
on.
Okay, but Bethesda, they've done a lot of good stuff, but I think a lot of people, they're getting a lot of backlash just because of this whole Fallout 76 thing.
Yeah, it's trash.
But that's one game. You know, like they've had. I think it's okay for a game company to have a few flops here and there. Like, think of all the cool shit that Bethesda has come out with.
Exactly.
And
think of all the cool shit that Bethesda's come out with. How could they possibly put something out that's so lackluster and so not inspired
I think
at all.
I think there was a vision there, but I just think it was poorly executed, and now they're like trying to fix it. But of course, it's probably too late at this point. It's kind of it's like the whole No Man's Sky thing, where like so many people were expecting it to be this big thing, and then it just
No guy buy.
no guy buy.
My dad bought me that for my
I
birthday.
got it for free with a buy two get one free at GameStop.
Nice.
R.I.P. GameStop. That GameStop is unfortunately, I think, becoming the Blockbuster of game. I mean, tell me I'm wrong. I mean, that Blockbuster faded out because of companies like Hulu and Netflix. And
There's one left. There's one left.
There's in Alaska,
In
because
Alaska.
the internet is so garbage up there.
Yeah, and there's gonna be one GameStop left in New Jersey. It's basically the same thing.
But no, I think GameStop is gonna fade out, but I think the smaller companies, like I mentioned, Play It, I think those companies are going to stick around for a little bit more.
Yeah.
Because they sell older games, and there's a lot of collectors out there that love to get their hands on that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I don't think they have much longer than GameStop does, because there's already a lot of people just selling that stuff on eBay and Amazon and Craigslist and stuff like that. So as much as I think those companies have a more of a chance to stay on a little bit longer than GameStop, I don't think it's going to be by much.
You can only go so far with trying to stay with the new. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, there's always going to be a certain novelty that comes with nostalgia.
Mm-hmm.
And you can always get a clientele with nostalgia.
Yeah.
But when it, like...
Star Wars, for example.
Star Wars, for example, yes. Literally just... if we got the original trilogy remastered...
They already did that.
Did they already do that?
In the 90s and the
See, they already
2000s.
took advantage of it. There you go. They stole my idea before I was born.
Fuck.
Damn. I'm suing them now.
They ripped the idea out of you while you were still in the womb.
While I was
Reached their hand up there and pulled the idea out of your brain.
while I was a common ancestor. Yes. So we've talked a lot about big shit and stuff that everyone involved in the gaming community has heard about. Let's go back a little bit more and broaden our topic to engaging your local community a little more, and the importance of actually talking to who's around you and not just trying to engage and idolize these people that are way like a long ways away and have a large audience and that are not nearly as close to home. Well, it's cool still to engage these people. Like we talked last episode about some really famous artists. New Kanye, old Kanye, you know.
Fuck that.
We talked we did talk about that though.
We did.
And Kanye's a good artist. I think Kanye makes good music. I listen to Kanye. But not only with music, but with local game developers, local businesses, local slam poets, local everything. Everything you do should have a little bit of local in it, I think. Because you live there. You live there. And there are people around you. And if you we're doing a podcast, right?
Yes.
We're doing a podcast in Columbus, Ohio. If no one in Columbus, Ohio liked anything in Columbus, Ohio, where would we be? You have
Probably
to...
part of Michigan.
Part of Michigan.
At this point.
We would have ceded Toledo to Michigan, and we can't let that happen.
Why don't we just sell Montana to Canada and use that
Why
money
not?
towards the national debt?
Montana is just the Toledo of America.
That-
you just
okay,
gotta...
That's a bit rough. That's a bit much. I wouldn't go that far.
But just engage local people. Like, last episode, we had on a local artist, and if we had on... Like, sure, we would have had more listeners if we brought on, say, Taylor Swift onto the podcast. We would have had more listeners. But I think it was a lot cooler that we had Evan Swiatek, who is a guy that is just as talented, if not more. Well, he's releasing less content, but I think it has a lot more to it. That is near us and that I can actually talk to and engage with. And it's just easier to... If you want to get anywhere, you have to engage in your local community as well. It's also self-serving because that's how you get connections. and that's how your city becomes known. That's why Los Angeles is a big city that people will leave the Midwest to go to, you know?
And I don't think we could have gotten Taylor Swift on the podcast if we tried.
Well, you know, we could have contacted some managers. I think we could have managed it in about 20 years. It would have been fine. But
with a GoFundMe, with a GoFundMe and Indiegogo
to pay her the $20 that she would have wanted to be on the podcast.
Yeah, speaking of like local, like Hanif Abdurraqib is kind of on the rise here in Columbus.
Yes,
as an author and spoken word and a.
We have been paying attention.
Yeah, and it's funny because I've been watching the show on Netflix called The 2000s, kind of going through the pop culture and that, and he's actually like interviewed on that show where they're talking about the movie The Wire.
My boy, yes,
the Wire, I think, which is an old. I want to say I think it's an old HBO show.
That's awesome. I didn't even know that.
He's like interviewed on that show, and I was like watching it, and he just pops up because when he came to our school and talked to us for a little bit, he mentioned how he was doing an interview for Netflix recently, but I had no idea that it was just going to be something that I just tuned in on and out of the blue just because I was looking for something else to watch. But I thought it was really cool.
Yeah, I walked up to him and I was annoying as hell probably, but I
bought his book and he signed it for me, and I got a picture with him. It was cool.
That's cool. I want to read his book.
I talked to him about Eden Burger over on High Street.
Nice. I want to have him on here at some point if we could.
Here's the thing: is that like, I talked to somebody like about that. I talked to one of my teachers because she was invited to, or like she managed to get to his like book release party or something.
Yeah. And
I talked to her about like, okay, like how much was it to get him at the school? And he's like, well, we had to get a couple grants. It cost somewhere around $1,000.
Jeez.
So unless he's like really down to be on here, that's great. But now is a good time to announce that we have a GoFundMe page to get Hanif Abdurraqib on. No, we don't.
No. We're gonna get some grants now.
We have to get some
Gab Street grants.
Gab grants.
Grant Street. That's all it is now.
Give us your money.
Yes, money. But so like. Hanif is one of those guys now that is going to represent our city well. And he's going to represent our city like artists represent other cities, like Kendrick Lamar represents Compton, you know? Mm-hmm. Stuff like that.
But we have 21 Pilots.
We do have 21 Pilots. That's cool, too.
I honestly think that is probably a good representation of Columbus, Ohio.
Yeah.
Their, like, schizo rock thing. There's a lot of people that are into... I like some of their stuff. I don't like them... I wouldn't like...
I like Vessel.
Vessel's good. Yeah. I don't listen to them nearly as much as I did probably back in like late middle school, early high school.
Yeah.
I think that their audience is kind of around that area generally. Like I still think that they're really talented and I like their stuff, but it's just not. I'm not going to actively add them to probably any of my Spotify playlists anytime soon.
Yeah, I agree. But I do I do respect their musicality a lot. And I think they're doing a lot for the city of Columbus as a city. Mm-hmm. I think it's really cool. And I think another important piece of engaging your local community is that people like that don't become those people unless you support them from the inside. And once you support people from the inside, that's how they get their outside support, and that's how they become nationally known. And, you know, if you start representing Gab Street, I mean, no, let's not talk about that now. But... you get my point, because there are a lot of people that are just like us that create content. And I'm not saying we do by our standards. We could. We'd have to hear that from other people. But there are a lot of people in this city that I know personally that deserve a much broader audience than they do now. In a louder megaphone, if you will, mm-hmm. I think.
I think it's also kind of like some people are unintentionally scared of self-promotion.
I am.
Yeah,
I am personally.
It's hard to get yourself out there because a lot of people, I feel, have that... Even if you generally think of yourself as an outgoing and outspoken person, there's that little bit of insecurity inside of you that's like, I don't want people to think I'm a joke because... people might listen to your thing and not see it as the same level of quality as people that are like higher up in that art form or medium or whatever it is that you're practicing.
Yeah.
And so they generally will immediately try to compare it to that, but they don't take into the consideration that you're just some kid in his room with a mic and a laptop, which is exactly what we are here.
Yeah.
So we're trying like and so a lot of people fear that they're just kind of be looked down upon or kind of joked at, but I think that's just kind of a risk you have to take, especially if you want to grow as an artist, as a performer, as anything, as any kind of something that you're trying to grow from the ground up. It's important that you take the leap to promote yourself as much as possible to get your name out so that you can grow and so that you can continue to create whatever it is that you want to create.
It's a difficult thing for me because I don't want to be obnoxious, but at the same time, I'll look at my SoundCloud page, and I put out a lot of music on there. I have at least 52 tracks now since this, I think September of 2017 is when I first started making music. Only a few of them have lyrics on them, but it's mostly instrumentals. And I put out music a lot, and I put a lot of effort into it. And I don't put any effort into promoting because I feel like I'm being obnoxious. And I'll go back and look at an album of mine, and I'll see how many plays I have. And it's like, you have like 35 plays on this song. And it's like, well, why is that? Well, because you don't talk about it, you know? And I don't know how to get past that. And I feel like a lot of people are very open and willing to shame you for putting yourself out there, even though that's what they want to do themselves.
Yeah. And I know what it's like to have that insecurity because I originally started doing internet content and YouTube videos back in January of 2013 when I got my first laptop. I started making videos just in what was it, Photo Booth, I think was the application, and I would just do that and then just edit on iMovie. But it's funny because the laptop that I had at the time didn't have iMovie on it, and I didn't realize that you could just download it from the App Store. So my mom had an iMac at the time, so I would record all of the clips on my personal laptop, put them, on a thumb drive, and then plug it into my mom's iMac, and edit on her iMac, put the edited video back on the flash drive, and then upload it on my laptop. So there was a bit of a process, and like, I would make these goofy little videos with my brother, and sometimes my friends. I would just kind of just come up with a concept and just kind of put out random shit. And people would start to watch it, and they would kind of make fun of me for it, which really sucked because I thought the stuff that I was putting out was really cool, and the people, like my family, was putting out really cool. But of course, your family is like gonna have a little bit of a bias,
right,
if you put out anything.
Yeah.
It's nice to hear that they like your stuff, but you also understand it's like, well, even if they probably didn't think it was that cool, they would probably still tell you that it's pretty cool. But like with your peers that are your age and people that aren't really your friends, they're gonna say otherwise. And so I took a lot of like negative feedback from that, and to the point where I was like taking it really hard to the point where I deleted all of those YouTube videos. I was fortunately able to back them up because all of the project files and clips were saved on my mom's old iMac, so I have like probably like 98% of them backed up.
Nice.
But I was just kind of like, for a while I kind of stopped, and then I realized, you know what, this is stupid. I shouldn't let what people think of me and my content affect my creativity and just let it shut me down, which is why I started doing videos on the Parzival YouTube channel.
Yeah.
And I started doing that, and then I started doing skits, and I joined the Outage Couch, and I just kind of was like, I don't care what people say, I'm going to promote the shit out of my content because I believe in my content, and I believe that what I have here has a lot of potential. So you just kind of have to do your best to get past the whole, you know, worrying about what other people are thinking about your content. If you think that your content, if there's an audience out there for what you're making, and you think that people are going to enjoy it, then you should push it as far as you can.
And I'm kind of hitting that stride now with my attitude when it comes to music. I know there is, because most of my music is heavily influenced by Aesop Rock, and Aesop Rock has quite a following. So I imagine that people who are fans of Aesop Rock, which are few and far between, but there are a lot of them, but they are far between, would have a good time with my music, I think. I just got to be able to find them, you know? And I think promoting this podcast is a good idea, too. I talk to a lot of people about it, and I don't feel any shame about that.
And I think we've done a pretty good job so far. Like, we're getting a lot of people inside and outside of school that are contacting us saying, hey, I'm really enjoying what you guys are doing. Keep up the good work, stuff like that. Like, there was a guy that we went to school with us that has now graduated, our buddy Jackson.
Yeah.
Who is currently, I think he's at SCAD right now. And he contacted us after he heard episode 2 with Mike, and he just said he left a comment on the YouTube episode, and it was so heartwarming. It was because he was like, wow, you guys are just not really joking around. Like, you guys are really taking this seriously, and you guys are talking about stuff that people really want to hear and people deserve to hear, and it takes a lot of guts to talk about that kind of stuff. And it did take it took a lot from Mike to say that, and we did make sure to make sure we got his consent multiple times. We asked him over and over again to make sure that it was okay that we released it. Yeah. And I think that the outcome was a very powerful episode that a lot of people really appreciated, which I think is good. And I think that though the show is not going to have a lot of those, emotional episodes where we talk about something as serious as that, I still think that Corey and I have a really strong message about other stuff that we want to get out, and just about topics in general. We are two really creative guys that have a lot to say about a lot of different stuff, and I think this is the perfect outlet for it. And I think that we're really starting to get the message across, and people are really starting to pick it up.
And my favorite thing is to hear suggestions for what to talk about and feedback on our episodes and what people think. When we get suggestions from our audience for topics for the next episode, which we would love it if people sent it in on this episode as well. Comment on the YouTube channel specifically, but it makes it easier for us, first of all, and if it aligns with something we've already been talking about a little bit too, it lets us know that we've been doing it correctly. You know?
So we do have a list of topics that we try to come up with for each episode. A majority of what you're hearing now is stuff that we've planned about talking about, but it's not necessarily scripted, but we just kind of have a general topic, we go off of it, and some other topics branch off of that as we go. So we have an idea of what we talk about, but we understand that there's also a lot of other topics out there that people want to hear us talk about and want to know our opinions on. So if you guys do have stuff like that, like Corey said, you can contact us through YouTube. We do have a Twitter. It's Gab_street on Twitter.
Yes.
You guys can tweet at that account. You can tweet at us individually. But yeah, we'd love to hear what the audience thinks of us and what they think we should talk about.
I agree. So with the art of podcasting, I believe there are a few things and aspects that separate good podcasts from bad podcasts.
Yeah.
First of which is audio quality. That's obvious.
Right.
We don't have to talk about that very much. If there's background noise, if there's just general shitty quality of microphone, then it's just not as listenable. Second thing is having structure. And that's one of the most important things for me because as you've listened already, not in the second episode, but the other two, and this episode, we have had music in between each topic. We have transitions, and we have specific sections in which we talk about specific things. And having that sort of divisor there to separate things into listenable portions is very important to the listenability of a podcast. Think of it more like a point where you can stop listening to use the bathroom if you need to, kind of.
Yeah.
It makes it easier that way. It also gives you a second to just kind of ruminate over the information you've been given.
I like that, yeah.
Yeah. Think of it like a TV commercial, sort of.
Yeah.
But we don't have those yet.
Yeah, and I kind of learned the hard way about this because before we started doing Gab Street, we did the Outage Couch podcast, which was all right. But I feel like the second episode, we only did 2 episodes of it. Second episode seemed a lot better because it seemed a little bit more structured,
Yeah.
and the quality seemed a little bit better because we had like a very professional setup. Thanks to our friend Linus, who had a kick-ass setup. We unfortunately don't really have the time or access to it right now. But I was part of a small group of creators we called ourselves Lefties Right. We did some sketches, we did a small podcast for a bit, and we did a lot of like skateboarding videos because we were really into that this was like freshman year.
Tony Hawk's Project 8, where I discovered hip hop.
I never played that one. I was a pro
It's a
skater
great
guy.
one. Dude, it was great.
But yeah, we did the Lefties Right podcast for a while, and the first episode, I think we only did we recorded 2 episodes, but the second one literally just kind of fell apart, literally, because like the table that we were using to hold the mic kind of collapsed. And so
That's perfect
yeah,
podcast material, though.
yeah.
Honestly.
But it was terrible. In the first one, there was no structure to it. We had no general list of topics. We had a decent setup and everything, but it was kind of really janky. We didn't really know what we were talking about. We were going all over the place. A lot of inside jokes were being used, and it was just all over the place. Like there was no structure to it. I feel like that's one of the most important things when it comes to podcasts is structure. You don't really want to be all over the place. It's important to have other topics to talk about, but I think if you're just all over the place and having the most ADD thing ever, then people are just going to be like, what is going on here? You know? People are just going to get confused.
And the third important, we're only going to do 3 today, but we'll probably do more later. But the third most important part to having a successfully listenable podcast is when you have guests on, it is important to have a specific point for them to be on there. You know, you don't want to just bring on your buddy and just be like, "Hey, let's shoot the shit." Which that works for some people, but if you want to have,
I think that's okay.
You know, the
for,
morning drive podcast.
Yeah, no, I think that can be okay for like starting podcasts if they have if their friend is at first. I think it's okay if you don't have a lot of topics to talk about, but maybe you have a friend that has a topic you guys want to talk about. Then I think it's okay, but it can be kind of weird because you're just bringing on somebody who isn't necessarily an expert in their field. Like, I feel like with this podcast, we want to bring on guests that work in a particular field, and because they know what they're talking about. They have firsthand experience with that kind of stuff. Yeah, and we're no expert. I feel like we're not experts on podcasts by any means, but I feel like this is just the stuff that we're learning as we go. Feedback that we've given and stuff that we've just learned as we work through this and listen to other podcasts for inspiration, I feel like.
Which brings me to our last topic of this episode, which are our favorite podcasts, which I have stuck to, other than Joe Rogan and H3 and the official podcast. Those are my 3 favorite outside of Columbus. My favorite 3 podcasts that are local. And again, this goes along with engaging your local culture, and this from that attitude is what sprung this trend for me. There's a website called columbuspodcast.com, actually, and that's what I found. And if you live in Columbus and you're always looking for more podcasts, definitely the site to check out. It turned me on to some awesome content. First one that I'd like to bring up is a podcast with Blueprint and Logic. It's called Super Duty Tough Work. They have an episode every Monday, I believe, and their voices are butter because they're rappers. They talk about what I'm super interested, which is rapping, but they also have a large amount of vocabulary regarding being self-employed, and they go through the process and the work that it takes to be successfully self-employed, and it's actually a very entertaining podcast to listen to. Second podcast that is my favorite from the Columbus area is Columbus This Week with 2 engineers. I forget their names at the moment, but they can be found on Spotify. They talk about general Columbus news, Columbus politics, Columbus sports, which I'm not a huge sports fan, but sometimes it's fun to hear sports banter, even if you're not a huge fan.
You ever listen to what is it? My stepdad listens to it all the time. God, what is it?
Is it Columbus?
Dan Le Batard and
No.
with Stugatz. It's a sports podcast, but it's also works as just general comedy. It's amazing. That and Jay Moore's Fox Sports podcast.
Cool.
Those are two like mainly sports podcasts that I've listened to. That like even if you're not a big sports guy, like it's great to listen to because just the comedic banter between the people there and like just what they have to talk about in general. It's if you're not really into sports but you want to get into sports, I feel like those are two good podcasts to listen to. I don't think Jay Moore really. I don't think he. I think he's. I don't know if he still does his or not. I heard that he stopped doing it, but I'm not 100%
Cool.
But yeah, and I think the podcast that I listen to the most is probably the Rooster Teeth podcast.
Yeah.
Because they talk about a variety of different things, as in like what's going on in, like they tell a lot of stories from what's going on in their life to like what's going on within Rooster Teeth, what kind of shows they plan on putting on, because they're a huge kind of internet production company now.
Yeah.
And so they've got a whole bunch of stuff, but they go from like talking about that, video games, just kind of stuff that's going on in the world, and they talk about the local scene a lot too with Austin, Texas.
That's cool.
Which is where they're from. So
yeah.
And I feel like that's kind of
that's what the third podcast from Columbus that I was going to bring up kind of does. They kind of go around as well, kind of like Columbus This Week.
Yeah.
But one of the first episode that I listened to from them, I started listening rather recently. It's called the Confluence Cast. Very professional sounding podcast from around here. I don't think I've heard a more professional podcast coming out of Columbus. But they interviewed the new CEO of Coda, like the bus industry, and I thought that was super cool.
The bus industry.
The bus industry, yes. Big buses.
Are you part of the bus industry?
Big bus is...
I'm in the industry.
Killing people, and they're
industry.
overcharging for fares. And no, it's actually I'm excited for the further development of public transit in Columbus. But they bring on these actual big names, and they talk about things that I find important as a Columbus resident, and they encompass the Columbus attitude very well, I think. Now, there's Columbus podcasts, there's national podcasts. There are actually now, including us, 4 podcasts at our high school, which I'm very excited about, 2 of which popped up rather recently. We are not the original. There was one last year titled Fireside Cast, and they did some pretty intelligent discussion. There's one that popped up this year called Thomas and Tyler's Not So Secret Diary. It's a friend of mine, 2 friends of mine, 2 friends of ours that have 1 episode out. They're also on Podbean. You guys can check them out. It's more of banter than we are. They talk about more local things, but they have great back and forth, and I love the way they speak to each other, and it flows pretty naturally, so I recommend checking that out. And another podcast is actually the official podcast of our school news magazine, Arlingtonian. And this one,
Arlingtonian podcast.
there is now an Arlingtonian
How the fuck
podcast.
did I not know that?
It is called the 305, which is the time that we get out of school. Which is, I think that's a pretty clever name, actually. But
That's interesting.
we contacted them, or I contacted them recently about possibly having us on there to discuss the importance of being able to hear your classmates in an unrestrained fashion, such as a podcast, and how the 305 is, paving the way for more student-created content to be spread to other students. I think it's a very important trend that should be upheld. But I think it's cool that podcasts are popping up, and us included, and I think that people are getting inspired, and I love to hear what my classmates have to say and what people around me have to say.
I think it's gonna kill radio. To be honest, I know like
I agree.
Sirius XM is still kind of big with what's his name, Howard Stern.
Yeah.
But I feel like eventually that because you have to subscribe to Sirius XM to like hear that with
Shit free, boy.
Yeah, we put this
The shit
podcast
free.
up for free.
Yeah.
And most of them do. I think there's very few podcasts, like almost, I can't think of one off the top of my head that makes you pay to listen to it, other than what might be through some kind of media subscription service, like other than like Santa Sirius, well, like those are basically just radio shows. But I think that podcasts are kind of bring down the radio industry.
Podbean lets you do premium episodes, but we're never going to do that, so do not worry, listeners. Unless we talk about confidential information, then you can pay $5 to listen to confidential information. But
Social security number is
333-33-33333.
Re.
Yes.
All right, I think that's about. I think that's a good time
That is a wrap, folks. Yes.
for episode 4 of Gab Street
Gab
podcast.
Street. Don't forget to make a podcast of your own. It's cool. It's fun.
We don't want everybody we want them to listen to our podcast.
Listen to ours, get
Listen to theirs,
inspired,
but listen to ours.
and then make your own. And engage in your local community. Do not forget that. Always engage in your local community, even if you don't think that someone, that you can get a lot from a name. I understand that. You
And
can get like a rapper's name or something. Just check them out. Give everybody a chance. One song. I ask you to listen to one new song a day from a new local artist, and even on that's 3 minutes. That's 3 or 4 minutes out of your day, and you will expand your knowledge of your city creatively, a lot, very quickly, and it's very fulfilling to have that feeling, and it's very fulfilling to know what people around you are saying and what your local people have on their minds. It's been very nice for me joining that recently. So keep that in mind. It'd be cool. Thank you for listening.
And don't play Destiny 2.
Don't play Destiny 2.
Don't play Destiny 2. Wait, is that the cease and desist letter right here?